The Austin Simmons early game mistakes, they're going to pay dividends down the road if they get fixed, but Ole Miss loses that game last season. And I'll talk all about that and more right here on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Steven Willis, a former 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we're breaking down the early SEC Week 3 betting lines brought to you by FanDuel, including several big conference games. And yes, the drunk uncle of the SEC game slate, Ole Miss versus Arkansas, that is this weekend. Then we'll look at the coaching clinic that Lane Kiffin put on against Kentucky, erasing a disastrous first quarter with no panic. Very Nick Saban-like, if we're going to be honest about that. And Ole Miss fans, it is time to put down the offensive line as crap talking point. The big boys up front flat out won this game against the Kentucky Wildcats. But first, Austin Simmons now has a trend of slow first quarters. That sample size will matter against teams like Georgia and Oklahoma, and it'll be on Lane Kiffin to fix it now before it costs them down the road. But if it gets fixed, this can make the Ole Miss football team even better. All of that and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're free and available on all the podcast platforms and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a big shout out to our insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy even offers fresh insight from across the conference. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. We did a video last week saying that this is the one mistake that had to be avoided by Lane Kiffin and Austin Simmons, or Mark Stoops would make Ole Miss pay. And by goodness, in the first quarter, it absolutely almost happened. It was an extremely slow start again by Austin Simmons. We talked about this last week. We talked about it during the camp. We talked about it numerous times. But in his first scrimmage, multiple interceptions, including pick sixes. In his first home start, 2 interceptions in the first quarter. He rebounded on that one as well. In the first road start, 2 interceptions in the first quarter. He rebounded after the fact there. There's a sample size that can be drawn from. Ole Miss desperately needs to figure out this slow start problem because Arkansas's offense is good enough. The game is 14-0 instead of 10-0. The 10-0 lead that Kentucky got because of the interceptions and the slow start was almost too much to overcome in this game. You need to take care of the football. You need to respect what's going on. And I get the fact that everybody's trying to figure out why it's happening. But I think Austin's just a little bit too amped in the first spring game, the first scrimmage, the first home opener, the first road opener. And now Arkansas coming in, maybe he's a little bit calmer in this field. Maybe going through Vaught-Hemingway Stadium again, that has him exactly where he wants to be. But the fact that Austin Simmons has been able to bounce back in the Georgia State game, which he should have bounced back in that one because Georgia State couldn't threaten Ole Miss. In the Kentucky game, on the road, when you created a little bit of a cauldron of belief when Kentucky went up 10-0 early in the second quarter. Austin Simmons was able to gain control. They did some game plan tweaks. They figured out how to make it work. They put the Kentucky defense in knots in this game and started doing the quick game stuff that we called for earlier in the week. Listen, it's not a genius thing. It's just a football thing. That's just the way it works. Lane Kiffin, whenever he is really working, wants to be a 1970s Oakland Raiders coach. Throw the ball down the field. That's what he does. Jackson Dart was a perfect quarterback for what he does because Jackson Dart wanted to throw the ball down the field. But when you look at it a year ago, when the down the field was taken away, there wasn't really a plan B by Jackson Dart. This was a game that if it happened in 2024, even though that team had Walter Nolan and all of those dudes and all of that talent, Ole Miss would have lost this game. They would have lost to Kentucky after falling back 10-0. This is a credit to Kewan Lacey. This is a credit to the offensive line, and we're going to get into them in the next segment because I think they're getting unfairly bashed on as it sits right now. But most importantly, it needs to be on the shoulders of Lane Kiffin and Austin Simmons. They did a lot of quick game. They did a lot of quick throws. They figured out different directions to attack in the run game. And because of that, you were able to keep the Kentucky defense off balance. And they completely took over the ball game to the tune of the last three quarters being 30-13. If you won a game 30-13, it would be a blowout. But because of the interceptions early in the game, it was 30-23. So Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss absolutely have this schedule where they want to be. Is it going to be tougher? Maybe. Is it going to be more considerate into the first quarter of games? It needs to be. It really does. Lane Kiffin needs to find a way to make easy throws for Austin Simmons because the pass that was the snap that was on the ground, it was just a bad throw. It was a panic throw by Austin Simmons. You could see him panic when the ball hit the ground and he took his eyes off of the receivers. He didn't throw a very good pass. On the second pass, it just wasn't a very good throw. He was trying to fit it in to Caden Lee, and there was a defender in front. He was kind of bracketed at the moment, and he sailed it because he got touched, and that was the second interception of the day. Kentucky's had a player with 2 interceptions in that game. Austin Simmons has a chance to learn from this. What's going on? How to calm down. The calm downs is a big, big issue with a game coming up in Athens, Georgia, and in Norman, Oklahoma. The calm down factor is great. Every Ole Miss fan should be happy about the calm down factor. They just don't need to Oakland Raiders 1970 football. Or if you do that, you can have that package in your system for a game, but the primary game plan needs to be quick game. Ole Miss in the first quarter was doing the same stuff that they did against Kentucky a year ago. Heaving the ball downfield, trying to make a big play on every single play. Like Mark Stoops said, Lane Kiffin wants to score every single play. But in the second quarter, it became about it. It's like, okay, if you're going to play soft coverage and sink back, we're not going to force it into the teeth of that zone. We are going to let the arm strength take over in hitches. And then the defensive line has to run back and forth of what's going on. And Kewan Lacey's hitting different spots. And he broke several explosive runs in this game. Ole Miss had 158 yards before contact in this football game. They gave up 0 sacks. This is a situation that Lane Kiffin did a masterclass job of putting Kentucky on skates and just slowly, methodically took the game over. And I'm pretty excited about what this could potentially mean because the reality with Lane Kiffin is the games that you're in the most trouble with are the games where he doesn't have a whole lot of respect for the defensive coordinator. If he respects the defensive coordinator, he's going to change. He's going to do some stuff. He's going to have plan A, plan B, and plan C. But if he doesn't respect the defensive coordinator, then all of a sudden it's A or bust. And Ole Miss got caught a couple of times on that A or bust. This year, they spent a little extra time on the Kentucky Wildcats, and it showed. They had multiple plans there. They were able to design what was going on. They did a little bit of off-tackle stuff because the strength of this O-line are the tackle positions. So it really worked out for Ole Miss in this game. I'm pretty excited about which direction it could go. Listen, nobody's talking about it, but Lane Kiffin put on a coaching clinic against Kentucky. For the first time in a while, Ole Miss truly played like the favorite, calm, efficient, confident. The adjustments were clear. After a flat opening, Kiffin dialed up tempo, leaned on balance, forced Kentucky into some uncomfortable spots. The result, Ole Miss outscored the Wildcats 30-13 over the final 3 quarters. It wasn't just Simmons making plays. It was Kiffin dictating the tempo and keeping Stoops from settling into a rock fight that he loves. So how did it happen? We'll show you exactly that and exactly what Kiffin did and why it worked and why the Ole Miss staff may have revealed a formula for controlling games for the rest of the way. We'll talk about that next. When the whistle opens up for a new repair, get your crew moving forward with the Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep by tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects. And while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. You need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next day delivery. Talk about a game changer there. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5. That's all one word, SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. College football is back, and I could not be much more excited. The tailgating, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it, honestly. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than actually going to the game. Endless queues, hidden fees, and prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use GameTime, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up GameTime in just a couple of taps. I saw some amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games for as low as $25 to get in. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download GameTime today. Hey, do us a favor and like and subscribe and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whatever audio podcast you're listening to and give it a 5-star review. It costs nothing but helps keeps all of this free. If you want even a little bit more, join the Insiders program down in the subtext link below. No trolls, 14-day free trial, and the easiest way ever to cancel. So give that a try. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, is ready for you. That's pretty awesome stuff indeed. Now, we talked about the slow start that Austin Simmons got off to in the Ole Miss Kentucky game. And he did get off to a slow start. Kentucky was up 10-0 early in the second quarter. They had all of the momentum. Kroger Field was absolutely rocking. And this was a game that we had seen multiple times last season to where in that year, Lane Kiffin didn't have a plan B. Kentucky made it into a rock fight, and there was nothing you could do because there was no plan B. This year, there was a plan B. There was a real plan B. And the best part about this, I always close every podcast with analytics or just the old English words that mean bad football. You saw Lane Kiffin taking points. You saw Lane Kiffin being very methodical. You saw Lane Kiffin playing slow at times for time of possession to keep his team on the ball. You saw him kicking field goals and taking points, even when that might not necessarily have been the play in 2021 or 2022. You saw a very grown-up version of Lane Kiffin as a college football coach. Against the Georgia Bulldogs, he respects the heck out of Kirby Smart, and he should. Kirby Smart's win-loss record absolutely through the roof. But you don't look at Kentucky the same way. Last year, Kentucky was Ole Miss in 7 as far as the record inside the SEC. Lane Kiffin, that ate his crawl a little bit as well. So Lane taking the stuff and playing the stuff by the numbers was music to my ears. Is this the sign of a new Lane Kiffin? You have a kicker that until he hit an upright in the first quarter of the game had never missed a kick over 50 yards. He's got a monster leg of what he can do. He's going to be a great kicker. He's on the Lou Groza watch list, and wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if he won the dang thing. He is a really good place kicker. The punt game, fantastic. The defense is good. You can trust it. And because of that, I think you can see Lane Kiffin morphing into that Nick Saban thing to where we're going to rely on our defense a little bit while we figure this out offensively. We're going to kick the ball. We're going to make sure every possession ends in a kick if we can. And we are going to go just out talent you because there's great talent at wide receiver. There's talent on the offensive line, at running back, even at quarterback, tight end. There's players all over the field to where in a lot of cases they can just out talent you. Lane Kiffin, I think, sees that. And he saw that at the end of the first quarter and he's like, hey, we're not going to panic, okay? We're going to play like the favorite. We're the favorite in this game. We have a better team than they have. We need to just handle our business and do what we need to do and not try and score a 14-point touchdown to take the lead after being down 10-0. And what you saw was Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss take over that game. Ironically, it was a fourth down conversion, which I had no problem with because it wasn't an analytics call. It was a momentum call. It was a try and flip the game type call. That wasn't just a, hey, it's 4th and 2, we need to go for it thing that you see on the bottom of the ESPN TV. No, Ole Miss had a play to Harrison Wallace. They knew they could take advantage. They decided on a back shoulder. It ended up being like a 50-yard reception. That was the reason that Harrison Wallace was the Locked On Ole Miss player of the game. That was the play in that game. And it was a 4th down, but it was the only 4th down of the night. They kicked field goals. They punted. They ran the ball. They were okay with going 3 and out. They trusted the personnel that they had. And that all put together gives me a lot of hope for the season, especially with road games at Georgia and road games at Norman and LSU coming up. All of these things make me feel good about what can happen. And for people that are just tuning into the podcast, playing like a favorite doesn't mean not going for it, okay? It means not just going for it because it's 4th and 2. You need to have a reason for what's going to happen there. And that reason needs to be, oh, we want to keep the ball. It needs to not just be, we want to keep the ball. If you have a reason, if you have a play, all of that stuff in the quiver on the offense, yes, go for it. But other than that, if you don't have just a surefire thing that you feel 90% confident in, you punt the football. You kick a field goal. If you do that, you are going to win most of the games that you play because you have better players than most of the teams you're going to go against. I think Ole Miss yesterday came out at number 14 in the coaches poll, or number 13 in the coaches poll, in the SID assistants poll. And they moved up to number 17 in the non-ball knowers poll, plus Michael Katz. So those two polls almost is going in the right direction as far as kind of filling in a narrative of what can happen. This was a big game for Lane Kiffin as a coach. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that the offensive line, hey, who knew it? They're pretty good at what they do. And part of that stems from them getting Delano Townsend back, who's only going to get better. He's an underclassman playing on the left guard. Patrick Kutas kind of getting into game speed a little bit. And by the end of the game, they were able to run the ball pretty much at will. You saw Trinidad Chambliss come in that everybody knew what was going to happen, and Kewan Lacey was making plays. You saw Ole Miss gain 158 yards according to the SEC network before contact. That's an offensive line thing. That is a situation to where you have a chance to be pretty good because of that. Everybody's going to nitpick a clip here or a clip there or something going on about what happened. That's just what's going to happen in this modern world. But if you look at the best offensive line in the NFL, you can nitpick a clip here or a clip there if you want to do that. There's confirmation bias all over the place, but Ole Miss won the game against Kentucky because of the offensive line. So I think the narrative of the offensive line being this horrible, horrible wart that you're trying to cover up, it kind of needs to go away because the stats don't kind of air it out as well. So we will see how that looks against the Arkansas Razorback. This is going to be a lesser defense, supposedly lesser. And we'll see if Ole Miss can run the ball like they did against Kentucky against the Arkansas Razorbacks. And if Austin Simmons can get off to a little bit quicker start, avoid the turnovers early in the game, because Arkansas offensively is good enough to make you pay if that happens. It's 14-0 if that happens. You give Arkansas's offense a short field, Bobby Petrino, Taylor Green, that's 14-0. And that might be a bridge too far. So it's going to be on Austin Simmons to kind of play within himself against the Arkansas Razorbacks and not turn over the football. Now, the other thing is I expect Trinidad Chambliss to have a little bit of a package in this game as far as running the ball. If we saw Austin come off not being able to put weight on his foot, he looked all right at the end of the game. I think he could have gone back in the game, and I'm almost positive he will start against the Arkansas Razorbacks. We'll hear a little bit later on today from Lane Kiffin about that. But if you do all of that stuff, just play clean. If Ole Miss just plays clean for 60 minutes, I don't know if there's a team on their schedule that can beat them. The only way right now I see that they could lose a game on their schedule, if they play clean, is if they help the other team in some way. And you saw that with a roughing the passer penalty that got them going on their long drive. 2 interceptions for Kentucky. It's a game that should have been a 3-score win by Ole Miss. But because Ole Miss helped Kentucky, it was a lot harder than that. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Stick around. Coming up next, we'll break down who could surprise, what are the lines to consider this week in the SEC, and how this betting week could shape the mood for the Rebels and beyond. Quick question for all of you college football fans out there. If you could go back in time and sit on the front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yes, I said hat. For me, it'd be the game. These aren't just hats. They're the same vintage styles fans wore back in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price as they did back then, right? When you use code Locked On, all one word, Locked On, you will get your vintage hat for $16.99. Head to thegamecaps.com. That is thegamecaps.com to grab your team's exclusive bar or retro circle design hat and use the code Locked On for an exclusive discount. Because legends wear the game. Lots of good lines this weekend. This is a good weekend for football, actually, in the Southeastern Conference. The drunk uncle of the SEC football slate, Ole Miss versus Arkansas, that is this weekend. Georgia, Tennessee is this weekend. LSU and Florida, although let's all laugh at Florida a little bit. There's a lot of good football games this weekend, perhaps none better than Vandy and South Carolina, as far as the meaning of where those teams could go. But looking at the Ole Miss-Arkansas game, Ole Miss opened up with a 9.5-point favorite over the Hogs, who are coming down to Oxford. This is going to be an interesting game, and we'll talk about it, really digging into it probably tomorrow, is something like that. But Arkansas at +9 coming down there. Ole Miss scored 63 points on them in Fayetteville. They were really jacked up. Jordan Watkins set the school record for receiving yards. You had Jackson Dart breaking Archie Manning's untouchable record. That was a big deal. This week, Ole Miss is only favored by 9 points over Arkansas. Now, if you look at the week 3 lines of going on, you got Wisconsin at Alabama. Alabama's favored by 18.5 points. That game is at noon on ABC Eastern. I don't know what to make yet about the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, I do know that you can't go off Louisiana Monroe in a game that they are completely jacked up to play because they got kind of out-efforted against Florida State. I don't know what this game is going to look like necessarily. So we will see. Wisconsin at Alabama is going to be interesting, but I don't know. Oklahoma is favored by 27.5 points at Temple. I don't know why they're playing at Temple, but they are. I like Oklahoma in this game. I like John Mateer. Oklahoma looks to be a really good football team. I like Oklahoma in the Texas game coming up as well. South Alabama is at Auburn. Auburn's favored by 25.5 points. It is on the SEC network at 12:45. South Alabama played Tulane kind of close, I guess. But Auburn has not played. I'm not sure that Auburn's played anybody to this point. Now, Baylor beat SMU in a 48-45 double overtime game, but I am not sure that the Baylor Bears are any good at this point because I'm not sure that the SMU Mustangs are any good at this point either. Georgia is favored by 6.5 points at Tennessee. This is a game that's fun each and every year. One of these years, Josh Heupel has to get over on Kirby Smart. That's a game that Tennessee, if they get the W, you could see two programs going in opposite directions a little bit on this. Gunnar Stockton running the ball pretty well, but they only beat Austin Peay like 28-6 over the weekend. It's one of those things. Tennessee can be a hard place to play. It's at 2:30 on ABC. We'll see exactly how that goes. Louisiana is at Missouri. It's SEC Network Plus, and UTEP is at Texas. It's on the SEC Network. The lines haven't come out for those games yet, but somewhere in the 20 to 30 range is where I expect both of those games to be. Another no-line game is Alcorn State going to Mississippi State. They're going to be 3-0. The Bulldogs are going to be 3-0. Then there's the drunk uncle game, almost favored by 9.5 over Arkansas, hosting them. Game is at 7 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN. I like the fact that it's a night game. We'll see exactly how that goes for the Rebels. Texas A&M is at Notre Dame. Notre Dame's favored by 6.5 points. It's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on NBC. This is the game that Texas A&M needs to start winning. You know, we all make the Texas 8-4 jokes and it's funny and all of that, but this is the game. If you want those jokes to stop, you need to win games like this. If A&M shows up and can beat Notre Dame in South Bend, you have a situation where Texas A&M is kind of becoming that team to watch. But they've given up over 20 points in both of their cupcake games so far. Florida is at LSU. LSU's favored by 9.5 points. It is at 7:30 at night on ABC. Florida was looking ahead past South Florida. South Florida beat them. And now we're back in the Billy Napier fired sweepstakes. Lane's not going to Florida. That's just not going to happen. He's not going to Alabama either, if we're going to be honest about it. But Florida is at LSU. LSU's favored by 9.5 points. LSU didn't look great against La Tech as well. Eastern Michigan's at Kentucky. I do not know what the line's probably around 12 on that game. Eastern Michigan lost to LIU over the weekend, by the way. That's the FCS school that Florida played in week 1. Had 50 points in the first half. Yeah, Eastern Michigan lost to that team. So we'll see what they bring to Kroger Field in Lexington. It's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPNU. And potentially the game of the day in the Southeastern Conference is Vanderbilt at South Carolina. South Carolina's favored by 6.5 points. You have to figure home field is being factored into this. It's at 7:45 Eastern time. It's on the SEC Network. I like Vandy. Vandy made Vatek absolutely quit in their game earlier this weekend. Just quit. They scored like 35 points in the second half, just completely just demoralized them and beat them down on their home field. Vandy did that. Vanderbilt did that. And because of that, I don't think we need to overlook Vanderbilt this season. Anyway, thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we are the front door of Ole Miss. If you don't believe me, Google Ole Miss Podcast and see how much we come up on that page. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it's absolutely free. Your support means the world to us. And another big moment for Locked On, college football fans. Locked On and Fire TV are presenting College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12, who had a rough weekend, honestly, leads the conversation. Two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson and former college star Jesse Holley and Locked On's panel of local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every single Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.